All right. A very warm welcome to all of you for coming for this particular first session of a six-part series on advancing growth for family-owned businesses and private companies during COVID and beyond COVID. And the first session is all about board composition. We have noted that there are very many businesses who struggle when it comes to board composition. And what we want to do is we want to give you a perspective. So I want to kick off this discussion by, asking Raj. And by the way, if you've not seen the first outline where we have introduced ourselves, please see the outline, which is, there's a link in this particular, below this particular video, where you can see Raj's background and my background, so it will give you a little bit of an insight there. But in this particular first session, we're going to share something on board composition. And Raj, I just want to ask you this question that, let me give you an example here. A mid-sized company, say in Dubai or Singapore, with about 200 employees, run by two brothers, and their composition or their so-called composition is the two brothers and three heads of departments, maybe one from marketing, one from finance, and one from operations. What would you advise when it comes to board composition, and what are some of the roadblocks that you see and challenges which companies face? So, Raj, maybe you can share some insights on that.
Indeed, and welcome everyone. Vijay, that's an all-encompassing question. So let me just paint the backdrop a little bit, and then I'll come to your point. Sure. When we look at companies out there, and typically family-owned companies, which have turnover of maybe less than $1 million or up to 100 million, and sometimes they are listed companies as well. So you can get a whole variety of family-owned and private companies who are quite large, or some introverted, and some actually very ambitious to grow. One thing that separates family and private companies, if you like, from listed companies or the bigger companies is stakeholders. The complication that the family-owned businesses have is, of course, they have a very prominent stakeholder in the family, and you don't typically have that in listed companies unless you do own a large number of shares. But the point there is that you've got a wide group of stakeholders who own shares as well. So the challenges for smaller businesses that we're talking about today is really around governance. What does good governance look like? What about succession planning? What about motivating people, be it family members or non-family members? So there's a lot of challenges here. So when we think about the smaller companies, and in my experience over the past 10 years, where I have had family owner clients or private companies as well, one thing is very clear to me: they're not very good on governance, and governance really requires a good board composition. So when we talk about board composition, the advice, if you like, from the best governance codes in UK, for example, is all about having the right skill sets in the boardroom to deal with your business model. So, for example, if you're going to be in an area that is very much to do with risk, be it financial risks or any other risk, then be sure to have somebody who is very much aware of that perspective and understands what risk management looks like. So in smaller companies, as you rightly said, you could have a very small team, maybe 2 people, maybe 3. You may not even have a non-exec director, and that's the independent voice, which is kind of best practice out there, to have somebody who can come and challenge you. Sometimes there is a real challenge between do we have a main board, or do we have a supervisory board, or do we have a family assembly or a family council, which can all be part of the governance. And what I'm saying here is that you could have a structure where you've got different family representations if it's a large family group, and therefore you could set up a family council whose voice is heard in the main boardroom. And so there are structures out there which we can use. But in the example you gave, it sounds like a company which is very well founded on commercialities. The business model has merit. But of course, as we know, the bigger the company grows, corporate governance does kick in, because you need some serious leadership, direction, vision, and how you're going to deploy that into a mission. And that's often lacking. And also I find that board meetings don't take place often enough. Maybe they take place once every 6 months. Or maybe there are weekly management teams and they don't call it a board meeting. Mm-hmm. The point here is that whatever the structure, there has to be very clear leadership and skills in the boardroom. And so coming to your point again, a couple of people, founder members, maybe 3 externals, a finance person, and so on. That doesn't mean that there is expertise in the room, and therefore we need to assess the board effectiveness, which we'll talk about a bit later. So a slightly longer answer, but I think one has to understand what corporate governance, good corporate governance, looks like, and then how would it sit well in a small company. And sadly, it's not a very good science out there, or even an art in family-owned businesses.
Yes, thank you, Raj. I mean, that hones in the message which we're looking for, and I think you're spot on when it says that when you talk about the governance aspect and how it really matters, and the succession pipeline itself, planning for succession planning as well, which is so important, which many leave it as a secondary issue altogether, rather than looking at it as a dominant priority. And you mentioned about leadership, having the leadership pipeline as well. Board composition, I mean, I serve on boards as well. And here's the thing, is the distinction between investment and cost, because, many want to scale up, but they're trying to look into the value that any new sort of non-executive director or somebody who would come on board is going to bring, But here's the thing, that diversification is so critical to the growth of organizations. This is why board composition, just like what you rightfully mentioned, Raj, is that diversification has to be there. Financial literacy, digital insights, because we are going into this technology-driven, decade. So all these insights and all this diversification is very important, and the capability to stand up to the changes which are taking places globally. So, Raj, fantastic, absolutely, important insights which you share. Most important is the passion and the fit that you have within your particular organization and outfit. Raj, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, let me just finish off this short session with a couple of challenges that people are facing. And you touched on them. Succession planning, what does that look like in a good family-run business? Well, people are actually pushing forward family members on merit, and they're working on it early. So succession planning isn't seen as an event. It's seen as a process. And when you think of it as a process, you're likely to deal with it earlier. Some people are in denial, sadly, and I think we need to address that as well. So what are the good players in the market doing in terms of succession planning? They're getting the family members, the younger ones, to get out into the real world and establish credibility, gain experience, gain qualifications, and then bring that back into the family. So I think that's an important point. And underpinning this is that there are lots of surveys out there, and roughly speaking, 15% of third generation companies,
make it
fall. It's very, very, very tough world out there. So I think we need to be very aware of how many companies actually last, I should say, and it's only about 15% that make it through to third generation and beyond, and that's not a very high number. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, and the journey starts with getting the board right.
Thank you, Raj. Yes, very important. So it's very important to start succession planning from the onset immediately. And just like what you mentioned, Raj, it's a process, not an event. So it's not a one-off event. It's a process, and it's a long-term process which you need to really look into. So that's pretty important. And board composition, at the end of the day, you need to look into the investment that new perspectives and the new diversification and the insights which you are going to get, which is going to grow your organization. We will be touching more on board effectiveness and decision making in the next sessions, in the coming sessions, where you'll get more insights of how you can go into deeply making your board effective and how you can make this construct effectively. So for now, my dear friends, look, it's been a pleasure. I hope you picked up some insights out of this first session. We are going to go to the next session, which is going to be the board effectiveness. So look out for this particular, for the second session video as well. Please connect with us on LinkedIn, so you can get all these sessions. It's going to be on our LinkedIn feeds, and most welcome to have an exploratory session with Raj and me at any point where we can come and support and help you. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.